Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited. Damn excited.
We are so excited to be joining you guys tonight.
Oh!
Well, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Oh, he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
We've got another live edition of the Intangibles brought to you by Arrowhead Addict. It is a great day to be talking Chiefs, and there's no one else I'd rather be doing it with than my good buddy, Christian Ainsworth. Christian, happy Monday.
Hey, thanks, man. I mean, every day is Monday for me now that school's out, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Well, you know, like this is the time. This is great. The summer is here. The kids are out of school. The NBA finals are going on. We're talking OTAs and you know, getting videos of guys playing football in their shorts. What else more could you ask for this time of year, frankly?
Oh, I know. Tyquan Thornton's about to be wide receiver one on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think everybody on Twitter knows that at this point. Have we gotten any more news on the stadium stuff yet? I feel like that's been big over the past week.
Well, the special session called by Governor Mike Kehoe for the Missouri Senate should be taking place soon. I'm not sure the exact date on that, but basically this is going to work like the kind of the negotiation tactic between that and the state of Kansas, because Kansas can't extend their deadline for the star bonds. Basically, Missouri is going to negotiate up against those Kansas star bonds to make Kansas decide if they're going to extend it or not. But I did want to ask you one thing. So you're a reasonably big NBA guy, right? Like you watch the NBA finals.
Oh yeah, I love the NBA.
What are your thoughts on the 25th and 41st media market being in the NBA finals? In case you don't know, Indiana Pacers from Indianapolis and the Oklahoma City Thunder are playing in the NBA finals, which appears to be starting in July 4th is the first day that they play those games, because they spread the NBA finals out so much for no apparent reason. But what do you think of those small market teams being in the NBA finals? Like, are you a fan of that? Do you think that that's good for the sport, bad for the sport? What do you think?
I mean, it's bad because there's not really like a dynasty like the Chiefs have in the NFL or like the Patriots had a while, the Kobe Shaq Lakers or anything like that. But it's like, it's kind of nice because you get to see teams that, you know, don't normally have the biggest talent or the most fans go to the NBA finals, but it is kind of like detrimental to the sport. I do think this like truly highlights the difference between the top tier sports like football and basketball over baseball, because it's you'll never see a small market team make a run.
Okay, so two good points there from you. I disagree on the first point. I think this is exactly what the NBA needs. And I know this is a football podcast, so I promise we'll get to it in just a second. But for how long has the NBA been dragging the carcass of LeBron James, Steph Curry, KD, all these guys, Kawhi Leonard, and it's just tired. Those guys aren't fun to watch anymore. They're all past their prime. And for a long time, the NBA, what was it about? It was about getting together a super team of 2 or 3 guys, and that was the formula for everyone. And now, the last couple of years, particularly this year, I feel like the best teams are making the finals, and we're getting a nice injection of youth into the game too. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, even in the conference finals, you had Anthony Edwards, you've got Tyrese Halliburton. There's all these guys who weren't big guys before. I mean, you had New York in there, but even then, like Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, those aren't exactly household names, and I don't know. I love getting these new players in the limelight. Like, I'm excited. I'm glad to see dialogue about SGA on Twitter and like if people like his game or stuff, because that's what they need. I don't need to hear more about Steph Curry shooting threes. I mean, he's incredible, but it's time for the NBA to get some new blood. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've watched all of these games. Pretty much. I didn't watch the first round, but I pretty much have caught every game since then. The Nuggets and Thunder series was excellent. That was a lot of fun. They pretty much put the T-Wolves to sleep there, but I've really enjoyed it. And to relate it back to the Chiefs now, you brought up the MLB, right? Like the Royals, we've talked about them a little bit recently. Their ability to contend is limited by the lack of a salary cap. Basketball has these two very small media markets in their NBA finals. I think they're going to do a halftime show with like the 4-H pig show or something. Like they're just going to bring the 4-H club on and have them show some cattle and some pigs on the court. Like that's how small this is. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what the TV results are from this NBA finals. Like, is it going to be well watched because we've got fresh blood in there, or is it going to be like the Diamondbacks Rangers World Series a couple years ago, where like nobody watched?
I mean, I think it'll be probably pretty good ratings. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's kind of hated among NBA circles just because of the whole foul baiting stuff. But that was kind of how James Harden was too, and he drew a bunch of ratings too. So I'm sure the ratings will be fine.
As a Chiefs fan, I like automatically empathize with that because like people say that stuff about Mahomes. So like I'm all
yeah.
And also like, okay, everyone else do it then. You go, like I saw some stat that basically SGA's has had like the best conference finals performance since LeBron, when LeBron was just carrying the Cavaliers when he was like 22. Like, okay, then everyone else do it. If it's so easy, if it's so replicable, if it's so phony, you do it. You can't, because like, and like he's not a shooter, right? Like he's got a chance to be the one of the few guys that's won a conference finals MVP and a regular season MVP in the same season. He's mastered that fadeaway jumper, that like long range jumper, the long 2-pointer, for a better term. But yeah, it's been interesting. I think it's just interesting. Like, you don't hear this stuff about the Chiefs. Indianapolis is a bigger media market than Kansas City. Why don't you hear this stuff about the Chiefs? Why are the Chiefs people just begging to have the Chiefs in every game that they can, year after year, after all this fatigue around them? And it's because of the star power, right? Like the Chiefs, they have a LeBron James, and it doesn't hurt that they've got several other stars beyond just Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know. I think it's interesting to kind of see those parallels go on in a salary cap league similar to the NFL. Shout out to Lawrence Smith here in the chat. Says he's been watching versions of the various AA podcasts for a while. He'll be able to catch one live. Welcome aboard, Lawrence. Good to have you live here on a Monday afternoon. We're just talking a little bit about baseball. Christian, do you realize that we usually don't have a show on a holiday, but today we are having a show on a holiday? Do you know what today's holiday is?
I actually have no idea.
Well, it's Jacking Off Day. Jack Caglione is being called off.
Okay.
All in Kansas City, we're jacking off here because Jack Caglianone's getting called up. He's the Royals' top prospect. His ceiling is Jack Caglione. His floor is Aaron Judge as far as a power hitter. But one of the Royals' top rated prospect, I think 2 weeks ago, hit 5 home runs in a week at AAA. Had another great week. Just a really special player. He was a pitcher at Florida too. He played both ways. He's just now, where's a size 17 shoe? He's like 6'5". Dude's an absolute monster. I think you put him on the edge, put his hand in the dirt, he's going to set a mean edge for you. Have a good bull rush. I could totally see him playing. Defensive line. He's got that frame. But with Jack Caglione coming up, we could see him tomorrow night in St. Louis against those dirty birds across the state line or on the other side of the state. Maybe you want to get a little bit of action in on that game. You can with Underdog. You can choose one option and you can make your game mean so much more on Underdog. All you have to do is pick higher or lower on a player. Go yard all baseball season long with Underdog's Pick'em game. Underdog is a leading place to make all of your sports picks, and you can play now in your state, including Missouri. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next to play? All you have to do is download the app and choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats. You can choose from things like home runs, strikeouts, total bases, and so much more. Once your pick feels good, you can play with as little as $1 to get everything right. You could win up to 1,000 times your money. I can already tell you, if it's an offensive stat and it involves Jack Caglione, you go higher. Home runs, higher. Bases, higher. On base percentage, higher. You just take the higher on Jack Caglione, you'll be jacking off your money. That's exactly what you want. So download the Underdog app and sign up with your promo code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word to receive a special offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. That's promo code Arrowhead Addict, all one word. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.npcgambling.org. Or in Arizona, call the 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York City, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. So, despite my attempts, we will not just be talking about Jack Caglione. We are actually going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs today. And we thought about talking a little OTAs. Honestly, man, there's just not been much. There's not been much. It sounds like Josh Simmons has got a real shot to walk out there day one in training camp. He might even participate in some of the later OTA events, which is very exciting. Sounds like, that there's a real chance that could be a real competition at left tackle. So today we wanted to take a shot at a little bit bigger picture activity, and that is the future of the Kansas City Chiefs. Christian and I have done a little activity. We are taking the top 10 most important players to the Chiefs' future for the next 3 to 4 years and rank them 10 to 1. And the reason why I think this activity is valuable is this team, we just finished talking about how they've transcended their small media market to become a darling of national television. And part of it is the Holy Trinity: Mahomes, Jones, Kelsey. Well, all of that Trinity is now 30 or older. A lot of that Trinity is closer to retirement than they are the start of their careers, unfortunately. So this team is going to look a lot different over the coming years. And there are certain players that are going to be relied on more than others. So, like I said, the conditions are, these are players that don't just mean a lot for this season, the future beyond here, the next 3 to 4 years. These are the players that we have the most important to the Kansas City Chiefs. Christian, before we get going with our list, any big takeaways from this activity? Something that really stood out to you about this activity?
We're relying on a lot of young guys, and that's kind of been the story since Mahomes has got his contract. But when I was going through this list, man, I was surprised at how many first or second or third year players I had on this thing, and had them high up as well.
There's a lot of things to take into account, right? Youth is definitely one of them. I don't have a lot of guys that are 30 years or older. The next thing is what position they play. Position value was something that came up a lot for me, is, running back versus cornerback versus edge rusher. Those things stood out to me. Something else that stood out to me is that there's still a lot of questions that have to be answered about some of these guys. The last 2 draft classes, and honestly, the last 3, there's still a lot of potential to grow from there, to glow up from there. So I'll be very interested to see kind of who you have. Looking at my list, I don't really have a particular theme. There's not something that jumps out to me more than others, but I definitely think a nice blend of veterans, youth, players that are on extensions, players that are not on extensions. So I think it'd probably be best that we start at 10 and work our way up. So Christian, who do you have at number 10? Your 10th most important player to the Chiefs' future.
So number 10, fellow Mizzou alum Nick Bolton is who I have. He's one of the leaders of the defense. He just got a new contract. The reason I have him so low here is because he's kind of in this Goldilocks zone of, hey, listen, I didn't get paid at the top of my position. I think he's tied for 5th, which if you're tied for 5th, and I know it's, off-ball linebacker, so not a whole lot of guys making 15 plus million, but it's nobody's really expecting top-tier performance out of you. Even you, whenever Nick Bolton knows that he's not at that top tier of off-ball linebackers. He's getting paid because he's a leader. He's getting paid because of his production. And he's obviously earned the trust of Spags. He's going to have to help out these young linebackers, these young DBs, these young defensive linemen. And that's what we're going to need him to do. He's going to be very, very important. He's here for the long haul. So it just makes sense putting him here at 10.
He was one of the people that didn't make my list, but it was close. One of the reasons why is because his contract is fairly straightforward for the Chiefs. Usually they tend to backload their deals a little bit. His is a little bit more they took the lump sum, divided it up in 3 years, and that's it. So there is a chance that by 2028 he's not on the team. I also think that they've made some moderate investments in linebacker with Drew Tranquill. I obviously don't think that I think Bolton will be on the roster longer than Tranquil. They did bring in Bassa, who I don't think is a middle linebacker in the NFL at the next level, but he's one that's really close. I don't particularly think that it's a bad pick or anything. It's just I'm not entirely. And you bring up a good point. Like, he is kind of the captain of the defense. His age, like the Royal or the Chiefs, you see this a lot. They really invest in young guys. Like, Bolton is still just 25 years old, I believe. That's pretty young for a guy on a second contract. And that's why they like this, where like almost all of his second contract, he will be under 30. So good pick there. For number 10, I have Trey Smith. I think, it is very obvious. I actually just wrote something about the Trey Smith situation, and just the Chiefs, it sounds like they want to get a deal done. That's the plan, to get something done. If you're going to be playing at the top of the market for interior offensive linemen, there is no shade of gray. It's got to work. It's either black or it's white, right? It's got to work with him. So Joe Thuney, they reset the guard market with him, and it worked. And no one looks at that contract and say it was a bad deal. Same with Trey Smith. He's got to be elite. He has been one of the best guards in the game. He's got to stay healthy. He's been able to stay healthy. But I think one of the cheat codes that the Chiefs have had, the way that they've been able to kind of moneyball their tackle position, even though it hasn't been extremely successful, it's having a really strong interior of the offensive line. They've already paid Creed Humphrey. If they're going to pay Trey Smith, he's got to pan out. So for those reasons, keep the interior strong, because you don't know what you're getting at left guard this year and going forward. So if you got center and right guards solidified, that you can work around that. So for Trey Smith, he's number 10 for me.
See, and to flip-flop it here, he was a guy that was very, very close to making my top 10, but didn't. Just because we're not entirely sure. I know we're basically sure that he's going to be here for the next 3 years, but there's still that sort of question looming in the air here for him. Like, are we going to get a long-term contract done? How is that going to look? Is this going to be a situation where, we pay him an absurd amount of money and the penalties stay high, and, maybe his production starts to dip, he makes some mistakes, and then he's off the roster? Not by any means, but certainly.
Yeah, and Lauren's kind of asked that question here in the chat too. Is there a concern that Trey Smith will decline in the next 4 to 5 years? Absolutely. That concern exists for every player you pay. They say you should pay players for what you are going to get, not what they've done. Now, in reality, that's not how this works. When the contract is signed, when the agent's working out a contract, they say this player's been to this many Pro Bowls, they've had this many tackles, they've had this many touchdowns, etc. But yeah, it's absolutely a concern. It's a concern for every player that you pay, whether it be an absolute superstar like Patrick Mahomes, or if it's a lesser known player like Trey Smith. So I would say, yeah, it's a concern. Now, I will say, you look at him physically, composition wise, this isn't, he's a big guy, but he's not some tub of goo. He's not some offensive lineman that I've ever had concerns about his weight. I do think that there is a few scheme questions there. Like, I do think that Trey Smith could thrive a little bit more in a different, more downhill run game, in a game that's not or a team that's not as quite pass heavy. But I still think like this is a good player, and you don't let blue chips walk out the door. So I understand why they did what they did. They chose the younger player. So if you want to hear more about my thoughts, check out the piece that I wrote on Arrowhead Addict today. Usually I don't plug my written work here, but it's a more in-depth look at kind of what decision they've made and where it goes from here. All right, number 9, Christian, for you.
So for me, it's Harrison Butker, the kicker. I know, putting him at number 9.
That's actually really good.
Thank you. Kicker is like one of the most underrated positions in the NFL. Every great team has a great kicker. You see teams like Baltimore who just got rid of Justin Tucker and are kind of, in limbo, figuring out how they're going to get this guy who had lots of really big kicks for him, how they're going to replace him on the roster. And that is a legit concern. When you're playing top tier teams, a guy who leads the team in scoring, and Harrison Butker, should be on the roster. You need a guy like that to hold your team together and make those tough kicks. I mean, how many tough kicks has Harrison Butker made over the past 3 or 4 years? Like an insane amount. I just rewatched the 13-second game, missed 2 kicks, kicked the one that mattered the most, and then got us into the position where we won the game. Like, you don't get to those positions without a guy like Harrison Butker. And do we need him to be the best kicker in the league? Probably not. I think the offense is going to take a step forward, but we need him to be at least 90% of top tier Harrison Butker, and I think we're going to get it.
Well, man, I mean, I gotta say, like, I'm used to just carrying the show and having to do everything myself and everything, but
right.
very refreshing for you to bring a good take to the show. The audience is truly caught off guard.
Wow, thanks, man. I love that backhanded compliments you just gave
Well,
me.
you know, when I see something that's good, I like to call it out. That's why you've never heard it before.
All right.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, what a hack it's been for this offense, where you get past the 50 and it's almost an automatic field goal, especially in clutch moments. I can't think of the clutch kick he's missed. And I'm sure someone could maybe point to one, but you know, you were talking about the 13 seconds game. Another one that's really underrated. The Chiefs more or less kind of did the 13-second thing again against Tom Brady's Patriots in 2018 against the Patriots, and they had to go down and get a field goal really quick to send that game to overtime. He made that kick, and he's just been money automatically. And yeah, we've seen how limiting a bad kicking game can be to an offense in the playoffs. We've seen that, you know, we saw the Ravens struggle with this. We obviously saw the results of the Bills 2 years ago. You got a bad kicker. Yeah, I mean, it goes on and on and on. So he's paid like one of the top kickers in the game. And yeah, like kickers, he's one of the very few on a short list of guys who you could realistically see being a Hall of Famer if he keeps this up. So underrated part of the dynasty, absolutely. It's been their special teams. And I'm in total agreement. Like, I probably should have him on my list. I don't, but I probably should. My number 9 is Omar Norman-Lott. First off, he's a second-round pick. This is a guy that you expect to work. Second-round picks, they should be playing a considerable amount of snaps or starting in year one. This is a guy who they brought in to fix the interior pass rush next to Chris Jones. Chris Jones has never really had a great player playing next to him. Yes, you know, Tershawn Wharton played well this year, but he needs to be a Tershawn Wharton level player or more. And I also think that this extends the bridge beyond Chris Jones, where this could be the centerpiece of the pass rush going forward. And also, I think it's worth noting that they took a little bit of a gamble on the player. It's a guy who averaged 17 snaps a game, 20th on the defense in snaps played at Tennessee. So this would be something that you'd like to see pan out. They took a little bit of a risk on him. If he does profile as that pass rushing player that they have, you've got some real ass kickers in the trenches with Chris Jones, with him, with Gelati, with Karlaftis, with Omenihu. That's something to get excited. And this pass rush was average this year, especially when you factor in what you're hoping to get from the coverage unit, where you can get some coverage sacks. So him working is a real glow up for this pass rush. If he just comes in and is average or Tershawn Wharton or less, it starts becoming a little bit harder to see how that interior defensive line succeeds with 33-year-old Mike Pennell. And then whatever else they're doing at One Tech with Siaka Ika or players like that. So I think I view him as a pretty important pick.
So does Chris Jones being 30 years old play into this pick as well? Having him at your number 9 spot?
Yeah, absolutely. Like making life easier on him. Like, I think at some point we've seen this from Joe Cullen in the defense. Chris Jones does the Jaws thing where Donna, he's walking up and down the line. He's going to pick the weakest pass rusher and go up against him. At some point, I think this defensive line needs to go back to, instead of trying to get Chris Jones the best matchups along the interior defensive line, they need to be rushing with a plan that is the most effective. And maybe Chris Jones ends up on Lane Johnson or something, a good defensive or offensive lineman instead of the weakest player on the offensive line. And you get Gelati a matchup, or you get Norman Lott a matchup. Make things easier on an aging player who's being paid at the top of the market, and then extending beyond Chris Jones's future too.
Yeah. I really like that take. The only thing that I would say, I don't have Omar Norman-Lott on here. I just think that position is so limited in its production, especially with George Karlaftis and Chris Jones on the field. Mike Dana has done a really, really good job of being that like third pass rusher, and Tershawn Wharton kind of took over that role. But I think you're right. Having a new guy come in, being able to add a little bit more upside is going to be refreshing. And I think we'll finally see that, Steve Spagnuolo defensive line he's been trying to create for the past, how long has he been here?
And I definitely think that is part of the plan this year, is that like, because of the lack of bodies that they have on the interior, Dana, Omenihu, Gelati, FAU, all of those guys can play inside too. And I think we're going to see some of that. I think we're just going to see plenty of those guys in there because they can maintain at the point of attack. So I definitely think you can expect a nice healthy dose of all those guys rushing from the inside as well too.
Yeah, well, and it's nice too that, at Tennessee, Omar kind of rotated in. And so he kind of has the understanding of like, this is how much I can push it. This is what it will take. Like a lot of guys, if they're, straight up D tackles, they're playing run and pass situations. I can imagine that being in a rotation could kind of throw him off a little bit. So him being in that perfect transition, I think is going to be nice for the defensive line as well. So for my number 8, I have Kingsley Suamataia, second round pick. Now, this is a guy who started out as the starting left tackle for the Chiefs last year. First couple games, he won the starting position over the summer. We were all smiles and then kind of fell off the tracks. And, he has to find a home. We just drafted another left tackle. We signed Jalen Moore. So left tackle, right tackle position seems like that's not really a place for him anymore. If he can't even compete at left guard, and we have Caliendo starting, I think that kind of limits how well this offense can do. And it shows that we wasted a second round pick. So like you said earlier, you got to hit on those second round picks. Kingsley should have, he has the athletic profile to do it. We need him to step up and be kind of the Trey Smith of the left side, if that's possible. And replace Joe Thuney. That's a big departure. People are downplaying that. Like, he's just a left guard. How much can he really affect the game? Dude, he can affect the game in absurd the amount. My goodness. I'm sorry. I'm just getting so worked up here thinking about Joe Thuney, how good of a player he was, so unrecognized. But like he can affect the game in so many ways. If you have a bad interior offensive lineman, it's almost worse than an exterior offensive lineman. You get a tackle that's really bad, you can at least work up in the pocket. Joe Thuney missing, that's going to be another part of that left side of the offensive line that's just a question mark. Somebody's got to step in. I think it's got to be Kingsley.
Well, here's what I'll say about Kingsley. I don't know the rest of your list, but I'm going to venture to guess that at least one of our Creed Humphrey or Trey Smith is on your list, maybe both. That's why Kingsley Suamataia is not on my list, because I think you've got a known commodity in the interior with those two guys, and that Kingsley, if he can be an average left guard at where he was picked, you're okay with that. They've also got several other bodies inside that they can work in there, whether it be Norzad or Hansen or Caliendo. I think that they can be average at left guard if they're not average in the other places, which we'll get to that a little bit more, but I certainly understand it. And this team really can't afford to be throwing away second round picks. We've seen the value of having extra second round picks. Look no further than the Sky Moore draft, where like Brian Cook panned out in the second round, Sky Moore didn't. No one really cares that much about Sky Moore being included in that great draft class because of all the hits they had otherwhere. So, yeah, I get it. And I think, like, protecting Patrick Mahomes, who I assume is going to be on our list somewhere, that's an important asset, right? So I totally get it. My number 8 is Rashee Rice. Stating the obvious, this is a guy who the future of the offense runs through. I thought him going down was an instrumental difference in the offense struggling last year. Even though they weren't lighting the world on fire weeks 1 through 3 when he was healthy, there was a lot more pathways for growth and development. And I thought it really hindered Travis Kelce. And also you didn't have the growth of Xavier Worthy factored in yet. I'm really excited to see what this offense looks like with a healthy Rashee Rice, with a healthy and second year Xavier Worthy, still having Travis Kelce, and then whatever you can get from Hollywood Brown. It's a much more exciting offense to think about, and you got to factor in too. Like, it's important to the Chiefs too. Is he going to stay out of trouble? He's done a good job this offseason. I think he's trying to repair his image. I know he's done some charity events recently. He's put some videos of him handing out food to people who in need, homeless communities, those type of things. There's a lot of work to be done here. If he's a good boy and he stays out of trouble and all those type of things, you could see a real scenario where the Chiefs might be interested in extending him. And he is like an Amon-Ra Brown type of player and could get paid as one of the top wide receivers in the league. He could also be a trade asset for a team who needs that. There's a lot of questions around him and where this next year takes him as far as health goes, as far as staying in and out of trouble, all those things. So I think this is a big year for him coming up. And I think the next couple of years are going to be very interesting to see like what type of player he is, what type of asset he is, and is this a player you want to sink your assets into?
Dude, I'm really surprised you have him this low on your list.
Well,
Like,
so
I have him at number 4.
Hey, no spoilers, bro. So
What
like,
do you mean? We'll get
Yeah,
there eventually.
so here's what I'll say. You already have a player on the roster, and look, we don't know anything about Jalen Royals, right? Like, it's just the beginning of his career. We've already got a player on the roster who can replicate some of his skills. Ideally, same frame, same build. Also, like Xavier Worthy, much different frame, but has done some of those things that Rashee Rice did. I think that there's a role that can be replaced with him. And I also think he's a little bit older. Like, believe it or not, he's entering his 3rd year in the NFL. He will be a unrestricted free agent after the 2026 season. So that's coming up. Like, it as weird as it is, because he's not a first round pick, he doesn't have that 5th-year option. You're going to be coming to the table with him a lot sooner than you think. And then also with the franchise tagging a wide receiver, that's a really big tag number. So that's not a game you want to be playing. So to me, the reason why he's a little bit lower is because I think like it's put up or shut up time sooner with him as far as the contract goes and his future. And then his skill set, while very powerful and very important to this offense, is not one that's not irreplaceable.
Yeah, and I would agree with that to some extent, but we'll talk about him a little bit more whenever I get to him.
Okay.
In the 4 spot to give it another go. Okay, so number 7 for me, George Karlaftis. This is a guy who is playing second fiddle to Chris Jones. I think that there is a real need for that in our defense, especially our defensive line, having somebody who can line up, be that go-getter, high motor individual that can clean up sort of Chris Jones' mess that he makes. But also, he's been doing a great job on his own. 10.5 sacks his 2nd year. I think it was 8 this past year. So he's a budding star. I think that he's maybe limited on upside because of his, how fluid he can bend around the edge. But I think he's a guy that can come to the games, provide that sort of second level, that number 2 defensive lineman sort of spirit, and clean up the stuff that Chris Jones is going after. He will need a contract extension for him to stay the full 3 years. He's a player that is probably not going to command top level salary, even though he is, putting up insane statistics compared to the people who are drafted in the same draft class. So I see him as a long-term part of our defensive line. I don't think he'll be super expensive. But again, it's sort of a mainstay in the upcoming years.
Karlaftis did not make my list, and the only reason why he did not make my list, because I do think he's a very valid selection, especially with the number of snaps he plays. He plays a ton. The Chiefs pass rush group has depth, especially this year, and I think the Gelati pick gives them a little bit of a runway where, like, I think the most interesting question about the Chiefs this offseason is Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis. Do one get extended? Do both get extended? Do none get extended? They've picked up both of their 5th-year options. They both are going to be expensive. I think Chiefs fans are going to be very surprised by the sticker price of George Karlaftis, a guy who's, close to double-digit sacks every year. I think his worst season is like 5.5 or 6.5 sacks, plays a ton of snaps, sets a good edge with a 1st-round pedigree. I think Chiefs fans are going to be really surprised by the price point of him. Don't be surprised if he's knocking on $100 million for his contract for 4 or 5 years. And we've already seen.
You think 25 plus is the starting point?
I do.
For him?
I haven't looked into the kind of comparable players for him as far as contract extensions go. So I'm not going to set a number on it, but I think people will be surprised at what that number is. I think Montez Sweat was the number and I think he got 4 for 98 or 5 for 98. There's a lot of similarities between those two players. And quite frankly, Karlaftis has done more, I think, than Sweat did before he was traded. So, yeah, I think people will be surprised. So I think he's important, but I also think having flexibility at that edge position, it's going to be something that they might need because realistically, we know they usually don't pay everyone. But this is kind of a different era where you've got these guys who are now like Super Bowl mainstays that were drafted by Brett Veach. Be interesting to see how they attack those contracts with McDuffie and Karlaftis. Whereas McDuffie is, no doubt about it, one of the top players at his position. And, there's a little bit of negotiation tactic there too, where are you paying him as an outside corner or slot corner? He's not, Revis or someone like that. That's a shutdown outside corner that you just put him on the team's number 1 and say goodnight to him. But also what he does in the run and stuff, I think in some ways could be more valuable than some of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they pay him. My number 7, Chris Jones. He's the oldest player I have on this list, but he is going to be under contract through all of 2028. He is paid as the number one interior defensive lineman according to Over the Cap. If that's next contract, that third contract, if it's going to be worth it, he has to continue to play at an elite level. We've seen guys like Cam Hayward play at an elite level from the interior throughout their career. He has to continue to be that guy, not only so they can continue to get away with some of the lesser options like Mike Pennell, Omar Norman-Lott, Ashton Gelati, all these guys that they're kind of just bringing along, but also like to make that contract not just a total sunken hole on their cap. The Chiefs realistically could get out after the contract after 2027 if they post June 1 him and divide the hit up. But ideally, they'd like to pay him throughout the end of that contract or rework it to soften the cap hit. But he's got to be the guy they paid him to be. 5.5 sacks this year. That's not what you paid him to be. The pressure numbers are good, but you'd like to see a little bit more from him, ideally. Now, I think it's a good sign. Him showing up to OTAs was probably one of the few notable attendance things. Like, we knew Trey Smith wasn't going to be showing up to OTAs, but him being there for phase 1 of OTAs is not something that normally happens. So a good sign there. But if that contract's going to work, Chris Jones needs to be Chris Jones.
Yeah, I agree. And he's one of those players that's the mainstay of, the defense. He's almost the Patrick Mahomes of the defense whenever it comes to, star power and how he affects the game. I'm just concerned about the age. I think that we're probably going to see him tick down a little bit. I have him on my list, obviously higher than you do, but he's absolutely somebody that's going to be, we go as Chris Jones goes on defense. If he gets injured, the defense takes a huge loss. Same goes for Patrick Mahomes on the other side. So I agree with your pick there. I would just have him just a little bit higher. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the age was kind of the one thing that held me down. Like, I don't think Chris Jones has to be peak Chris Jones, 15.5 sack Chris Jones through this activity for him to be valuable, right? Like, some of these guys we're getting ready to talk about, they have to be the best versions of themselves for this team to continue to do what it's doing.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess you're a little bit more optimistic on Omar Norman-Lott than I am. I loved him as a player, but I think that he's going to need at least a year to develop. And I think, if Chris Jones has to be top tier Chris Jones for 2 or 3 of the next 3 years, then, it's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who's 30 years old, about to turn 31. So my number 6, your guy, Jaden Hicks. So this comes down to 3 things for me. Spags' system, they've always had a great safety, whether it was Tyrann Mathieu, whether it was Justin Reed. We've had a safety, back there that can sort of run the secondary. Now, Trent McDuffie's going to pick up some of that because we haven't had a super top tier, high pedigree cornerback that has sort of led that. We've had Snead a few years ago, Charvarius Ward before that. So there's been that presence, but not necessarily a guy like Trent McDuffie, who they've drafted with super high draft capital and I think who has that trust of Spags. So Jaden Hicks is going to have to step up. He's going to have to shoulder some of that burden. Reed's departure of the past year, we knew that Nick Bolton and Justin Reed weren't going to stay. It was going to be one or the other. They opted for Nick Bolton, I think partially because they saw Jaden Hicks and how well he's picked up the defense. And to me, it's the players around him as the last part of this. Brian Cook, pretty average free safety. Mike Edwards, came in, played some legit snaps for us a few years ago, but not necessarily somebody you're, banking on for the defense to play incredibly well. And then Dion Bush, who's been kind of a non-factor, but a really good special teams guy. Somebody has to step up in that room. And I think it's got to be Jaden Hicks, has to help out the back end and be that safety that Spags usually has in the defense.
Yeah, we actually won't spend much time on it because he's my number 6 as well too. And
nice. There we go.
It's just very obvious that this is the centerpiece of the safety room going forward. You've got Shamari Connor, whose role is in question now after the slot position's now been kind of taken back over by Trent McDuffie. Brian Cook's in his final year, and then you've got kind of journeyman veterans like Mike Edwards and Dion Bush. So I think the plan is for him to be a dude and to kind of be the new Justin Reed. So yeah, they need him to be a guy. If he doesn't work out, you're kind of at a loss. And we've seen what poor safety play can do to a position in the secondary, right? Like, it can have a major impact on the back end. Okay, so my number 5, Creed Humphrey. Best center in football, not close. And now that Frank Ragnow retired, it's even more not close. I actually just tweeted out a graph of him just like dominating in the top right hand corner of EPA, etc. But
Any metric that they measure centers by.
Yeah. He's the best center in the league. He's paid like the best center in the league. He's got to be that, right? Like he is the cheat code, right? We can never really calculate, measure what all he does for the offense as far as calling protections, helping Mahomes see things. You want a strong center quarterback combination. The Chiefs have just been money at generating stud centers over their time here, whether it be guys like Tim Grunhard or guys like Rodney Hudson, Mitch Morris was great.
All the studs.
Well, you slipped Austin Ryder in there. I wouldn't know this. Super Bowl champion Austin Ryder to you, bud. They've just generated these guys. So Creed Humphrey, he's got to be Creed Humphrey, and he's very important to the future of this team. It's not a valuable position as the comment says here, but I would tier value and cost there. He's valuable to you because you paid him, right? So that's what I would say.
Okay, I can see that argument. And I would also say he's the one player that is guaranteed to touch the football in every single play. There's if you need something more than anything else, we can talk about quarterback, we can talk about left tackle, defensive end, cornerback. Those are all premium positions. If you can't hike the ball, you can't do anything with any of those guys. So really is an important position. Like you talked about, sort of calling out the protection stuff. We'll never know exactly how much he does with that, but absolutely he's instrumental in that. I don't have him on my list. I think that center is a limited position. But I do have another offensive lineman here at my 5 spot, Josh Simmons. So 3 major points here. Tackle play has been abysmal for the Chiefs over the past, really since Mitch Schwartz and Eric Fisher left. Been kind of in limbo there with Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley, our right tackle for a while, who we would beg to have come back to the team, I think, at this point. But Juwan Taylor allowed 7 sacks last season, had 19 penalties. Really, really sort of up and down season for him. Mitch Schwartz, he's been really the only tackle that we've had over the past couple of years that has been money and has been above average. My second point, it's second most important position on the field. You got quarterback, left tackle, and then it's D-line, cornerback, wide receiver. Like those are the premium positions. He's at a premium position. We invested first round, draft capital into this guy, and he's got to pan out. If he doesn't pan out, we're relying on Jalen Moore, who, granted, has had a good year on film, sitting behind Trent Williams. I'm sure he's a great bench guy, great guy that can hype up the guys on the bench, but we have no idea how well he's going to play in the NFL. So he's position of need, super high draft capital. If he doesn't play well, and we are in limbo again, and we've invested, what would it be, 3 draft picks at this point and a free agent acquisition on the tackle position, that's not great. And I think you saw how bad we can debate why we lost the 2 Super Bowls that we've lost over the past couple of years. I think left tackle you could probably tier as one of those top reasons. So if he's going to come in and play really well, that's the next step. That's how you take the offense back to glory. That's how you keep Mahomes off his back. That's how you win Super Bowls. So Josh Simmons, number 5.
I have Josh Simmons on my list, and he is higher. So
yeah,
that will tell you about how important I think he is. Number 4, I have Trent McDuffie. I will be shocked if the Chiefs don't pay Trent McDuffie. I think that he is the best player on the defense. I think he is a superstar. I think what he does covering out of the slot where most of the best players in the NFL play, at least part-time, if not full-time, his ability to play downhill in the run game, screen passes just look different against the Chiefs defense when Trent McDuffie showed up. If you don't believe me, go back and watch some of the 2018, 2019 Chiefs defenses and see what a screen pass used to look like versus now there's number 22 just flying in there. And I frankly think that this is a guy who's going to age very gracefully. There were some parts of his profile that he could transition to safety as he gets older. I firmly believe that if he's on the other side of 30 and his legs start to go, that could be part of his profile going forward too. I view McDuffie as, a true blue chip of this roster, a player that you pay what it takes to keep. Either that or we're talking about serious draft capital coming back in a trade, which I hope that doesn't happen because we saw what the slot looked like without him in it this year, and it looked like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Trent McDuffie is my number 4 player.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. He's a little bit higher on my list as well. But dude, people will give him crap because he's not an outside corner, but being a slot corner is super, super, super difficult.
And people keep talking about that. He was the second team All-Pro this year as an outside corner. So his floor is second team All-Pro outside corner. Sorry, he's not the first team All-Pro. Jesus Christ, it's not you. There's some of the other bigger national podcasts they're gonna get McDuffie in the slot and hopefully get a better version of him. It's the first team All-Pro. Come on, this is a guy who had historically short arms, a little bit undersized for a corner, and still was shutting down guys like Jamar Chase on the outside. So he's a stud.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to number 4, Rashee Rice, who is also a stud. I think he's poised for the biggest breakout we've seen from a Chiefs wide receiver since Tyreek Hill. And the offense is dying for a hero. That's my number 1 note. Offense is dying for a hero. Travis Kelce's about to retire. Xavier Worthy's still unproven. Hollywood Brown is still unproven. Noah Gray is kind of this reliable target coming from the tight end position, but I don't think anybody's worried about Noah Gray on Sundays. I think that we need somebody to come in and play legit reps, catch a lot of passes from Patrick Mahomes. He did it in those first 3 games this past year before our own quarterback took out his LCL. So I think he's poised to actually do really, really well. We also need somebody who's going to be around here for the long haul. You talked about him and sort of the mystery if he's going to be around here for the long haul. I think he's a player that Patrick Mahomes has said a lot of great things about. It's obvious they have a connection on the field, and I think he's just in the catbird seat for being the next Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce of this offense. He's got the connection, got all the tools. Yeah, he runs from the slot, but who cares? Amon-Ra St. Brown does as well, and he's an absolute stud. So I think the other reason why he has to be great over these next 3 years is because we have to have a bargain somewhere. Somebody who's getting paid not a lot has to be very good. I think Rashee Rice has the best opportunity to do that. A lot of people aren't talking about our top 5 guys over the next 3 years take up over 60% of the cap. So that's Mahomes, Kelce, Jones, Humphrey, Smith. Obviously, those vary according to the year, and you expect some of those guys to get deals or restructure.
In the cap will go up, and some of these guys. But I mean, hey, we were just talking about who do you want to let go? Trent McDuffie or George Karlaftis? None of the above, please.
Yeah,
so
neither.
These are all guys. These are all guys that got to be paid, and guess it never stops ending. The perfect roster with a paid quarterback doesn't exist. The closest thing you saw to that was the Eagles, and they really weren't paying Jalen Hurts yet. That's really starting now. And even then, there were holes, but very few. My number 3 is a wide receiver as well too, Xavier Worthy. And I have Xavier Worthy higher because he is younger, because he has a skill set that's less common, that game-changing speed. We see what it does to stretch the field. We see what it does to stretch the field horizontally. And he is now just in his second year. He's a first-round pick. You need to see his trajectory continue to grow. You're okay with the type of player he was this year, but ideally for a first-round pick, you want to see that grow more and him be more of that downfield weapon. Rashee Rice, Jalen Royals, even Juju Smith-Schuster, we've seen them plug into that power slot role, or for Jalen Royals' case, you think he can. There's no one who can run like Xavier Worthy on the Chiefs roster. And we saw the value of how much the Chiefs value that position. They trade away Tyreek Hill, and the next day they sign Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Obviously, we want more for Xavier Worthy than MVS, but that's a role. Even when the Chiefs had Jonathan Baldwin, they really care about having that field stretcher. Andy Reid does. So that is a valuable position here, and that is a player he's come in year 1, really contributed. I think that skill set's really special. I think he, despite some of the stuff that's happened this summer, I think he's a really high football character guy. And yeah, if this offense is going to be what they want it to be, Xavier Worthy's got to be the guy they drafted.
Yeah, and I don't know about you. We've all had a crazy ex that has kind of tried to ruin our lives. Not commenting on that explicitly, but those types of things happen, and it's not necessarily the dude's fault.
That sounds like a Intangibles After Dark episode.
There we go.
I personally don't have an ex that's trying to destroy my life, but you do, and that sounds great. We can get
really?
Get Jerry Springer on or something.
Yeah, maybe a Patreon. Let's do a Patreon after
Hey,
dark.
I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer wife chooser. Okay, one and done. Okay, I dated a girl in college. She was the one. Put a ring on it. We're all set here. So
Hell yeah, man.
I'll give you more advice on that later. All right.
Okay,
Who's the next one for you?
So Chris Jones is my number 3 for all the reasons that you said and a few more. He only has one legit coaster on the D line, and it's George Karlaftis. He's 30 years old. Depending on how you feel about Omar Norman Lott, we may need a lot of Chris Jones. We might need 80% of Chris Jones. So he's a guy that's a leader of the defensive line. Contract, he's getting paid the big bucks, so he's got to perform. The defense goes as Chris Jones goes. If he's not a top 5 pass rusher in the league like he has been the past couple of years, it's like, oh, well, how are we going to do this? If he goes down, how does the defense, provide pressure and help these guys on the back end? I don't think it can without somebody like Omar Norman Lott stepping in. So Chris Jones, number 3, that's my reasoning.
Yeah, and I can totally see why he would be higher because of the contract value, and he's their best pass rusher. Like that's what he is right now, and he needs to age gracefully, kind of like we talked about. My number 2, Josh Simmons. You already listed him. I view him as the most important player to the Chiefs' future that's not named Patrick Mahomes. This has to work. We have seen all the assets that this team has tied up in tackle since Eric Fisher and Mitch Schwartz went down in the same year. They've had some longer term band-aids like Orlando Brown, like Andrew Wiley, and then they've had the short term band-aids that rip it off real quick, like the Donovan Smith, and we've seen them constantly inject draft capital into Kingsley Suamataia, into Wanye Morris. It's not worked. And my number 2 most important player for the Chiefs is protecting the blind side of the number 1 most important player of the Chiefs. And when it comes to Josh Simmons, it's not just left tackle. Juwan Taylor is cheaper to cut than keep next year. He's got to solve left tackle so they can solve right tackle. The hope is that Jalen Moore is solid enough that you can count on him being the right tackle next year, or maybe it's Simmons. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. But if Josh Simmons does not pan out, whether it's because he can't stay on the field because he can't stay healthy, or he's just not good enough, and we're talking about him moving inside to guard or something, it is super critical to this team, and it will really hurt the future of this team. Because guess what? You're back to the drawing board. I'm back to having to do a mock draft where everyone says, did take a tackle high enough, and I don't want that. And this is really, really all this boils down to is mock drafts. It's all just a cycle back to my mock drafts.
Right.
So
you gotta chill with the mock drafts, dude. That's not what the people want. We wait.
In all seriousness, I would like to mock something not a tackle in the first round. Joking aside, it's got to work. It's got to work. And Patrick Mahomes, he's not going to be as mobile as he is right now, as he was the year before, etc. We are all aging, unfortunately. So Patrick Mahomes is going to need that blind side protected. So for all those reasons, Josh Simmons is the most important non-Patrick Mahomes player to the future of the Kansas City Chiefs.
And for me, that player is Trent McDuffie. You talked about him ad nauseum a little bit earlier. He's the best player in the secondary by a mile. I mean, and he's going to get paid. He's one of those players that I think is so inexpendable for the Chiefs that I think everybody's got that $25 million contract chalked up to a year or two from now. One of the best coverage backs in the league. You said second team all pros and outside corner, and we were screaming at the top of our lungs, or at least I was at a few of those games where he was getting bullied by Matt Collins, a guy who's looks like he's a foot taller and 50 pounds heavier. It's like, okay, yeah, might not be able to guard that one specific guy, but everybody else, he's in handcuffs. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty in the secondary as well. Christian Fulton, Jaden Hicks, Jalen Watson, Brian Cook, two guys that are not exactly superstars at the position, but have played very well, who've had good stretches. And then Shamari Connor, Noel Williams, guys haven't had good stretches yet for Noel Williams. Shamari Connor, really, really no opportunity to do that from the slot from where he's been put up. So Trent McDuffie, have to keep him doing well. As long as he does well, and Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes, I think this team is at worst a top 7 team in the league.
Let me just tell you, I don't understand why I bought a no soliciting sign. Okay. I bought a no soliciting sign. My neighborhood they are pounding at my door. I don't want solar panels. I don't want pesticide. My roof is great. Please. the dogs, they keep barking because people just keep knocking at my door and I have a no soliciting sign. Okay. Shout out to Weston Brewer in the chat. In Price Carter, we trust. Yes, Weston, that's correct. You can comment in the chat. I will read your chats all the time. All right. So number one is Patrick Mahomes for you too, I assume, correct?
Yes. Yeah, obviously.
Let's talk about it for a second, though. Clearly, any team, quarterback is the most important position in the game. Duh. However, the reason why this is important and might be different than it was before is this is a new phase of Patrick Mahomes. We've kind of had three phases. We've had phase one, the 5,050, the Tyreek Hill, the Travis Kelce. Now we've had this phase two where the defense helped, kind of working with less post Tyreek Hill trade. Patrick Mahomes is chasing ghost. There is no quarterback in the league right now that he is chasing. The ghost that he is chasing is number 12. And, maybe you can argue about number 16 with Joe Montana, but for the most part, he is chasing Tom Brady. He still has a very real chance to go to as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady did. If he's going to achieve that, you already see it. You see the whispers online. Is he regressing? Is he lesser than he used to be? He's got to figure out how to make this offense move without Travis Kelce, post Travis Kelce. And look, there's not a lot of excuses anymore. You've got a second-round pick in Rashee Rice. You've got a first-round pick in Xavier Worthy. You got a first-round pick in Josh Simmons. You've got a left tackle that you've paid. You're paying your center. You're paying your right guard. You've got a fourth-round tight end. You've got a fourth-round wide receiver. Like, the list goes on and on. Like, this offense has had investments in it. At some point, it's not just the wide receiver's fault. It's not just the protection's fault. And, we see a lot of times history is written by the victors. Right now, everybody, the Eagles are the toast of the NFL because the last thing we saw was them winning the Super Bowl and dominating the Chiefs. So if Patrick Mahomes is a declining asset, people are going to forget that he came back with 13 seconds. People are going to forget that he won a Super Bowl with MVS as his primary wide receiver, that he won a Super Bowl on a bum ankle. So I think it's important to his legacy for the Chiefs, obviously. And, believe it or not, it'll be time to rework that contract very soon. I think he has like a $75 million cap hit next year. So don't be surprised. Josh Allen just got a new deal. Lamar Jackson's deal just came through. Don't be surprised if Patrick Mahomes' contract is coming much sooner than people expect.
Oh, which is fine. I think next year and the year after, he's got like an $80 million cap hit. So, yeah, I might need a restructure at this point, a complete overhaul of his contract. I mean, the one thing I think that you hit on that was the most important there is his legacy. And I think it's important that he plays well over the next 3 years, not only for the Chiefs, but for his legacy as well. I mean, we talk about Aaron Rodgers in a completely different light after he won that Super Bowl against the Steelers and then did nothing for the rest of his career. If he just stopped playing after he won that Super Bowl with the Steelers, he would be talked about as one of those top three quarterbacks of all time. Like, we saw peak Aaron Rodgers just throwing dimes all over the field, one of the best arm talents. And then his leadership, his mentality, I think kind of got in the way of him being able to go back to other ones. And his play kind of fell off, frankly. And if you see that same thing with Patrick Mahomes, that's how the discussion will go. I mean, they will talk about the dominance of Patrick Mahomes in his early career. And then if we don't make it back to another AFC championship and we are first round, second round exits, I think that will completely change how they talk about him as a top 5 player.
And there's also this moving target bullshit where it's like, okay, well, let's see year 2 when the defenses figure him out. All right, well, let's see what he is without Tyreek Hill. Okay, well, let's see what he is without prime Travis Kelce. Okay, well, let's see what he is without Andy Reid. It's like, okay, well, I mean, if he has to check off every single box for you to admit that he's a top 2 quarterback of all time, then I think it might just be you, bud. It might just be you who doesn't want this to be true. Believe it or not, like, football is not a game that's won by a single position. Like, Tom Brady had a pretty good coach too. Tom Brady had some pretty good defenses. And, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay with like a ton of really, really talented player. People forget, like, Tristan Wirfs was the right tackle on this team. Donovan Smith was still playing well at left tackle. They had Rob Gronkowski. They had Chris Godwin. They had Antonio freaking Brown, like, who is like Hall of Famer. Like, that team was stupid talented. So it takes more than one. Like, we've not seen many quarterbacks just win with absolutely nothing. So yes, like wins, they're not just a quarterback stat. We know that. But for Patrick Mahomes, like, yeah, there is a legacy element to this. And there's also like, hey, if Patrick Mahomes isn't going to be the tide that raises all boats, the rest of these 10 players that we just listed off, it doesn't matter. Because if he sucks, it gets way harder, especially when you're paying him what you're paying him. So he's got to be Patrick Mahomes, and that's where this starts and ends. And yeah, you see how this can handicap teams when they don't when they're paying a quarterback and they don't perform at that level, whether it be Aaron Rodgers, whether it be like Jared Goff with the Rams before he kind of revitalized his career with the Lions. So
it's important that he shows that he can win without two superstars at the wide receiver and the tight end position. That's just how it is. If he wants to prove that he's the best quarterback of all time, you've got to win in all circumstances where you have a super team around you, where you have all-star players around you, and when you create all-star players around you, which that's the phase that we're in. He's got to make sure that Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy do really well. If he can do that and win another Super Bowl, or even not win another Super Bowl, and we blame it on how bad the defense is, that's fine. But he's got to show that he can still be a very, very high player. And I know a lot of people right now are saying that he cannot, based off of last year and the year before. And I think he hears that. I think we will see a better Patrick Mahomes, but it is important that he plays incredibly well for his legacy and the Chiefs.
Absolutely. This has been a really fun activity. I've enjoyed this. This is some of that like off-season content that you can really enjoy, as far as like you're talking ball, but you're also talking big picture, and the stakes are pretty low this time of year. But guys, please stick with us throughout the whole off-season. We've got a podcast every single day. We've got 55,000 followers on YouTube, or subscribers, I guess I believe is what that's called. We're going to be churning out off-season content all year long. As we get closer and closer to the dark days, it is time to get going. So please become an Arrowhead Addict member. Interact with us on Instagram and TikTok. We've got some great reels out there on your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok. They're doing a great job with that. So like and share those too. That just helps and grows the brand and helps us do nice things like ad shows and get interviews with exclusive players and stuff like that. So please continue to invest in us, and we will do our best to bring you the best product possible. So from all of us here today, Christian, good work today. You did good. Okay, I'm proud of you.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, you made some good points. You talked about your crazy ex. You're really taking steps. Richard, who doesn't need to take any steps because he's excellent all the time, running a great show, running a tight ship like he always does. And for all of you in the chat today, we super appreciate you. And as always, from here at Arrowhead Addict, it's Go Chiefs. Have a good one, guys.